For all the latest on the SaWGuY podcast, be sure to subscribe and don't forget that bell icon. Welcome to the SaWGuY podcast. As always, y'all know I am the SaWGuY, and you're joining me for a Grindhouse feature on episode 48 of Demon Night. So without further ado, it's frights, cameras, action.
Hello, and welcome to the SaWGuY podcast.
I ain't no fucking clown.
That is better.
Now clear your minds. He knows what scares you.
I'm just gonna bash your brains.
What the hell? The boogeyman is real, and you found him. What do you want?
I want to hear you scream.
Hell. Everybody loves popcorn. From the front time, bitch.
I say this is a Grindhouse feature because Demon Night epitomizes classic B-rate in the 90s. You know, and just doing the research for this episode, it just kind of tripped me out that Demon Night was not an original idea of Tales from the Crypt. Like, holy shit, I didn't even know that. And, you know, it's kind of interesting because when Tales from the Crypt came out, you know, towards the late 80s, early or mid 80s, around that time when it came out, it became a cult hit. You know, everybody knew about it, you know, because it was the fact that that was the Friday night show that you would watch or late night show that you would watch, you know. Depending on where you live, I know they played at different times and stuff like that. But anyways, you know, Tales from the Crypt, it became so big. And this is what they started to do, you know, in early 90s. Is that if a TV show is so big, everybody comes up with the idea like, oh, you need to make a movie about it. You need to make a movie about it. I mean, you've seen that happen with The Simpsons and all these other, you know, TV shows that are getting movies now, you know. And, you know, the 90s, they were no different. They were no different. So what they decided to do, they wanted to do a movie, right? And I thought it was interesting because I'll give you a little bit of, you know, feedback and all this other stuff behind on Demon Night and, you know, how we got the Demon Night that we got to watch because this is interesting, right? So Demon Night was a script that was written about like 1983, 1984, around that time frame. And what's funny is that, you know, when it was written, they tried selling it to different places, right? And everybody loved it, it's just nobody wanted to put money into it. Go figure, you know, I don't know why they did that. You know, I was reading and doing all this research, and it comes to find out that it wasn't until like the 80s, like late 80s, that Tom Holland, he just finished doing Child's Play, and he got a hold of the script. And he was going to do it, but then he kind of backed out and was like, well, the budget is a little high, you know, for the demons and stuff like that. So he went on and did another movie, you know. What I also thought was interesting is that, you know, it went back and forth. It went even to Full Moon. Full Moon, of all places, had this script in their hand. And everybody knows Full Moon because they did, you know, Puppet Master, Demonic Toys, you know, just like the random stuff. And they're classic for beat rate, you know. They looked at it and they loved it, but it was just out of their budget, right? And that's what sucked because it was like, you know, imagine this film as a Full Moon film, right? Then, in I guess you could say early 90s, you know, when Pet Sematary 1 and 2 came out, Mary Lambert, the director, she got a hold of the script, and she wanted to do it, but after she did Pet Sematary 1 and then did Pet Sematary 2, everyone was just like, they didn't have faith in her, because, you know, it was just the fact that Pet Sematary 2, it flopped. A lot of people didn't like it, but I liked it. You know, so from there on, it's just the script went back and forth with everybody until Universal got a hold of it, right? What I thought was interesting is that when Universal bought it, they said, okay, let's try to switch it up so we can kind of save money here and there, right? The original story of this, right? They were going to rewrite this and make Billy Zane's character, the Collector, they were going to make him, I guess you could say, a Bible salesman, and he went to door, right? And he would have a bunch of cronies with him in suits, so that way they weren't, you know, they actually be the demons, but you wouldn't see him in demon form because, you know, it cuts on the budget costs and stuff. And, you know, honestly, I thought that was really cool, but then if you sit back and think about it, like, holy shit, this is just a remake of Halloween 3. I'm pretty sure that's what somebody said. You know, there was, you know, probably a horror fan that said the same thing, you know, working in the industry. And, you know, once they decided to go with that, they're like, oh shit, I guess you're right. So then they basically said, okay, we're going to get some money, we're going to fund the fuck out of this, we're going to make it in the original way it's intended, right? So that's what I thought was pretty cool, is that this film could have been completely different, you know? But thanks to Universal and putting in the money, and then they got the Tales from the Crypt, you know, theme kind of going with it, this became a cult icon, right? So as I do in every episode, I'm going to explain how the movie starts and all that good stuff. And if you've ever seen Tales from the Crypts, right? When it starts, you hear the beat, dun 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 dun, and then it still goes through the house and everything. It did it exactly like that. You can see the Crypt Keeper come out. They did the whole logo, Tales from the Crypt. The only thing that I thought was interesting is that they kind of did like this, I guess you could say, intro. And they did an intro where it shows this lady, she's talking on the phone. Yeah, baby, I got it done. And it's implied that she had killed somebody and she went to go take a bath. And it showed that the body was, dissolving in fucking acid. Hydrofluoric acid, I guess, something, right? So it shows that the body's coming up. He sees her in the bathtub and he's ready to, hit her with the axe. And all of a sudden you hear, cut! Cut, 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 cut! Then you see the Crypt Keeper come out. And he's like, what do you know about scary? You're not even a... God, what was it? He said some funny-ass puns, That's the good thing about Tales from the Crypt. There's always fucking puns, right? Then he looks into the camera, kind of like the TV show, and explains, oh, your pal, the Crypt Keeper, has gone Hollywood. I'm going to show you this film. I call it Demon Night, right? So now you officially have the movie started, right? The movie starts off in a car chase scene. You see two cars going super fast. You have William Sadler. He plays, the character named Breaker. Then you have Billy Zane, who plays the character as Collector. So it's starting off that, Billy Zane's chasing him, but you don't know what, So he's going down, and then all of a sudden his car starts chugging. He sees he's out of gas, and he's like, fuck! He turns around, and then all of a sudden he has this old school Henry rifle. I don't know what it's chambered in, but I know, when he was shooting at the car coming at him when Billy Zane was coming, he caught the car on fire, and I was like, you can't do that shit with a lever action rifle, man. I mean, you gotta be a crack shot to hit, the exact points, but whatever. Anyways, he shoots at the car, and then all of a sudden, Billy Zane's still coming, so he's like, oh shit! Jumps out of the car, Billy Zane hits him, big old crash scene, right? You're still seeing all the credits and everything. Then you see Breaker, he comes out, and then he was just like, alright, fuck this, and he's still running, right? And he's trying to run into town. And then it follows his story on what goes on with him, right? So he goes into town, he sees that he's in New Mexico. He's in Wormwood, New Mexico. I know there's probably a hidden meaning why they called it Wormwood. I don't know. For some reason, I always thought that was a Tremors reference, Let me know in the comments below if you think that, because I know I was like, Wormwood, that's gotta... I don't know, that sounds very similar to, it's in the desert, and it has worm in it, kind of Tremors-like, right? So anyways, he goes to this diner, and, he pops out his butterfly knife, and he's trying to crack open a car so he can, try to jerry-rig it and steal it. Cars in the 90s, they had the little keyhole, so you just put a knife in there, pop it out, and it was, that's what it was, right? So as he's doing it, he sees this little kid, and he's like, sir, what are you doing to my daddy's car? And he tells the kid, he's like, oh, I'm just checking to see if it's locked, And he's like, hey, you want a quarter? And I thought that was kind of creepy the way how he did it. He was like, hey, you want a quarter? And then the kid's like, Dad, the guy's trying to steal your car out here. Then he starts fucking running. Then you see, the diner owner come out and everything like that. And he's like, forget it. He's already running. So then you see Breaker. He's running, right? He runs to the side like this empty gas station. Kind of looks like a barn almost. And, then he hears like the thunder and lightning and everything. Then that's when he gets creeped out by Uncle Willie, who's played by that guy, Dick Miller. This is one of my favorite Dick Miller films other than Gremlins and Terminator. Dick Miller, he plays, I guess you could say, like an old school drunk. And, he mostly does that in a lot of his films. But, he played the old school drunk and he was talking to him and everything like that. He's like, hey, you want some? And he was drinking whiskey and shit. So, and they were talking about like, it's better served than the monkeys. Or something like that about monkeys. So, William Sadler's character, Breaker, he drinks and everything. And he's like, hey, you got a place I can crash at. I know a place right up the road, right? So they go walking and they see this, big-ass building in the middle of nowhere, right? And he's like, wow, this is an interesting building, And he's like, oh, yeah, it used to be a church until the 50s when they decommissioned it. So now they use it as a hotel. And then as he's walking up there, all of a sudden you see more lightning and you hear the thunder and all that shit. He looks at his hand and then you see like these weird stars that are all around. And then you hear like a tiger growl. It was just kind of weird. And all of a sudden you hear that. Then all of a sudden like it just lights up and then it shows like all these stars in a circle, 7 stars. And he's like, just my kind of place, right? He goes in there. Now this is where it starts introducing all the other different characters, right? You have Cordelia, who is, basically, I guess you could say not the prostitute, but she kind of gets around, that kind of girl. You meet Jerry Lynn, who's played by Jada Pinkett Smith. You have Wally, who's like the postman guy. And, what I thought about Wally was funny, the actor who played him, Charles Fisher. he played on Welcome Back, Kotter. I was like, oh shit, you know, and he was also in Nightmare on Elm Street as the Sleep Doctor. So he gets around in horror films. That's pretty cool, you know. But anyways, you see all of them there, right? And then all of a sudden, you see Irene, right? Irene, she's the one who owns a hotel, runs it and everything. He goes in there and he starts talking to her, and he's like, hey, you got a room I could, you know, stay in? She's like, well, I normally don't, you know, rent out to strangers and shit. So he pulls out a wad of cash. She's like, well, I'll make the exception. And I thought it was funny, you know, because she pulled it out, and then she's like, putting it in her shirt and shit. And then, that's when she's yelling at Jerry Lynn, which is Jada Pinkett Smith's character. And then you find out about her is that she's on a work release program. She was in prison, and so she got put on work release. And you find out more about her story in a bit, right? And so when Breaker meets her, he looks at her like weird, and then, you know, he's like, whoa, hold on a second, right? He sensed something. But then you find out later on what it's about, right? And then all of a sudden, you know, she introduces him up to the room and everything. And then Cordelia, she's like, well, I might want to go and give him some dessert and stuff, right? So you have all that character development build up, right? Then all of a sudden it goes back to, you see the sheriff and the deputy, right? They're staring at the, you know, car accident scene. And this is where the kind of like dark humor comes in, because the deputy's like, wow, they must have been going well over 100 miles there. You know, it was just kind of cheesy B-rate, right? And, you know, they're calling on the CB radio and shit. And all of a sudden you see Billy Zane come out of nowhere, and he's like, hey, you know, did you see him? They're all like, hey, we need to talk to you, sir. He's like, yeah, airbags, gotta love him. But you see that guy that was walking out over here? He's got something important in mind. And then so, basically they kind of have dialogue about like, hey, what happened? And he never explained it, right? So this is where it's kind of interesting. Then all of a sudden, you know, he rides with the cops, and then the cops, you know, they start asking him like, hey, that must have been something important, you know, that you were looking for that thing, you know? And he's like, oh yeah, it's very valuable. You know, it's just something along the lines like that, right? Then, you know, on the dispatch, they tell, you know, the sheriff, like, hey, this guy tried to steal a car, you know, come over here, right? So basically he's following, you know, with the cops everywhere where Breaker went, right? Then it goes back to, you know, the hotel, and that's when they start, you know, showing more character development and everything like that. Breaker, he gets into his room, he's worried about where everything's at and shit. And then all of a sudden, you know, they start eating. Then all of a sudden you see Cordelia and Wally, they start talking. And Wally starts talking about how he got fired as a postman and everything like that. And Cordelia, she's kind of like, you know, the hot chick, and he likes her, but she don't like him, that kind of deal. And then, you know, she's waiting for her sheets to get done, and then, you know, they're asking Geraldine to do it, and Geraldine's like, hell no, I'm cleaning the stove. So he's like, oh, I'll go get it for you. And then, you know, she's over there talking to Irene, well, I feel bad for the guy. Maybe I should give him a freebie. And I thought this was the funniest line out there. She's like, yeah, just another thing to screw him. You know, I was dying at that. I was like, damn, I love this dark humor, you know? But anyways, it shows now that they're eating and everything like that. And then Jerry Lynn, she has this cat named Cleo. And so this cat was jumping up on there. And then you see, you know, Cordelia on there. And then they're all talking. And he's like, hey, you want some? He's like, hell no. You know, Uncle Willie's like, I don't eat that shit. Then you see Irene come in. She's like, get that pussy off the table. You see the cat. And then you see, you know, Cordelia get up. And then she's like, I'm talking about the cat. They start having weird feelings about Breaker because he's being very quiet and kind of to himself a little bit more, right? So what Irene does, she goes on the phone and she calls the cops, right? And then it goes right back into the scene where it shows, you know, the sheriff and the deputy, and it shows the collector, right? It shows them, they're all like, oh, okay, now we're going to the place, right? Then Breaker, he starts hearing noises. Then all of a sudden, I thought this was funny too, because now you see Thomas Hayden Church. Yeah, that guy. You know, the guy who was the Sandman in Spider-Man 3. He's in this film. He plays, I guess you could say, kind of like the asshole stoner in this film. And it's just, I can't see him as that. I really can't. You know, I always see him as, you know, I guess you could say more like the Sandman. It's just, that was one of the first films I saw him in, right? And so when I started seeing him in this, it's just like, wow, you know, he plays a complete asshole really good, you know? So he comes in, he's just being all the tough guy, and he's like, yeah, it would have been done, but some guy was trying to steal, you know, his car and everything. And then you hear Uncle Willie, oh, that piece of junk. You know, so it builds a lot of character development. He meets up with Cordelia because it's implied that him and Cordelia are boyfriend and girlfriend. So as she's going up, and then all of a sudden, you know, you hear them having sex going loud and everything. Then all of a sudden, Wally, he has her sheets, and then Irene's like, yeah, you might want to leave those sheets out the door. She's going to need another fresh pair in a sec. It was kind of funny, you know, it's dark humor. That's the shit that I like, right? So anyways, after that happened, then the cops show up, right? Then they try to arrest Breaker, and then Breaker, they're all like, hey, give him what he wants. Give him what he wants, right? And then Uncle Willie kind of sold him out. He's like, oh, this little thing? You know, and he shows him. It's like a key, but it has like hearts and shit all around it. And I thought it was pretty cool. And then it's like, if it's filled with fluid. You don't know what fluid it is, right? So all of a sudden, he's like, yeah, just go ahead and put it in here, right? So they put it in, you know, before he could put it in the case, the sheriff takes it and he's like, all right, both of you guys are coming with me. I know you're bullshitting because that car was not yours. It was stolen. So, you know, they arrest both. Well, they put Breaker in handcuffs. They're walking out, and as they're talking to the collector, he's like, we got to find out who you are. And then, you know, Billy Zane being Billy Zane, you know, he's like, well, fuck it, why not show you now? You know, and then that's when he punches right through his face, and everyone's like, oh, shit. Because this is where the film takes a twist, like, how the fuck did he punch right through his face, right? Then all of a sudden, you see Breaker, he's like, give me the fucking keys for the handcuffs. And he's fighting with it, you know, trying to pull that shit out, right? He finally gets on handcuff, and then they start to shoot him and shit, right? Obviously, everybody's, you know, not a good shot. So he comes up to Breaker. Breaker has the key, and he puts it right in his face, and it burns the fuck out of him. Then he jumps out. And, you know, this is another funny scene of mine, is that when he jumps out, he's like, fuck this cowboy shit. Takes off the cowboy hat, the jacket. You don't go cowboy, motherfucker. You know? It's like, whoa, okay, so he's obviously supernatural here at this point, right? And then that's when he starts talking a little bit more. You know, humans, you know, you guys are a bunch of waste. Then he jumps out of the window, and as he's staring at everybody, you know, he says, I hereby condemn this place. Then he pulls out his fucking hand, and then he has, like, the pinky with, like, the long-ass nail. He cuts the shit out of his hand, and then all of a sudden green ooze starts coming out like blood, right? And all of a sudden he's just splashing it, just all over. What I thought was cool is that the way they got that effect was the same way how the Predator got his blood, you know? They basically got green glow sticks and they broke it and used all the goop and everything in there. And what it's implied is that he's throwing his blood all around, and then you see the ground kind of boiling and shit, and his fucking demons coming out like, oh shit! Then that's when Breaker's like, everybody get inside! You know, then all of a sudden all the demons come out, and then he sends them like to go get after him, right? So you have, you know, Jerry Lynn, she's being attacked on one end by one fucking demon. Then the demons are all coming in. Then Breaker, he's doing this thing with the bottle where he's like pouring little drops on the edges, and he's basically sealing it, right? And, you know, at this point, Roach is like, fuck you guys, I'm gonna try and make a run for it. So he tries to make a run for it with Cordelia. Cordelia, she gets caught by one of the, you know, demons. Wally, he tries to be the savior, and as he's, you know, trying to save her, he shoots the, you know, the demon. The demon ends up laughing. He's like, you gotta shoot the eyes! Shoot the fucking eyes! And I thought that was pretty cool, is that they actually show, you know, once you shoot the eyes, they fucking shoot out like lightning and shit, and they blow up. Very different from most demon films already, right there, right? So as that's going on, you know, he saves her and everything. Everyone's bickering, and then he basically says, okay, show me all the windows. So he seals up everything, right? And as they're all talking, you know, then they start, you know, trying to figure out what's going on. Breaker, he's still being quiet on that, right? And, you know, then I guess you could say Roach, he's like trying to get everybody against everybody because he's like, fuck this guy, that's his war, not mine, you know? So he's over there trying to talk to Wally. And then, you know, he's over there, you know, Cordelia is like treating him like shit because he left her behind. And what was the comment that he said? He basically said, oh, whores don't have friends, you know? Just, they really wanted you to hate his fucking character, Roach, you know? So anyways, as they're all talking and everything and bickering, Cordelia, she's got this weird thought, right? Then it shows, like, you hear the collector's voice, like he's talking to her, you know? Like, hey, Cordelia, you know, it's such a shame, beautiful waste, you know? Just let me in and I'll take care of you. Let me in, right? So she actually lets him in, you know, like mentally. Like, I guess he took her over. And so as she's still in human form, she calls up Wally to the room. And she starts talking to Wally. You know how much I always loved you, you know, all that shit. And all of a sudden you hear Wally scream. They run up there and like, what the fuck? They tear down the wall and then, you know, they tear down the door. And all of a sudden you see Cordelia just destroying the fuck out of Wally. But she's in demon form, right? And so they're all trying to attack her and everything like that. She smacks him, grabs Irene's arm, and then what I thought was cool with this effect is that they pushed her arm all the way back and it just snaps off. And I was like, holy shit, that's a classic B-rate, right? And then eventually they have to kill Cordelia because she's a demon and everything. Then they're, you know, basically trying to nurse Irene back to health. You know, she's drinking vodka. Give it to me! Just slamming that shit down. And then they start thinking, okay, well, we need to get the fuck out of here, right? And they don't know, you know, where they're going to get out, right? So all of a sudden, you know, then you start seeing Jerry Lynn's cat come in, you know? They're like, how the fuck did this cat get in when everything's all sealed, right? And they comes to find out is that, you know, they had an underground, like, mine shaft. right? And they figured out that the cat was going in and out through the mine shaft. So they said, okay, fuck it. Roach said, fuck you guys, I'm going down to the mine shaft. So they went down to the mine shaft, they tore it open and everything. And they finally go inside the mine shaft and into the cave. Then they see that the fucking demons are already there, so they start running, right? They all come back. They see that this, the kid, Danny, the one who tried to sell him out to his dad for trying to steal his car, that kid was in there, like, hiding, right? So they come all back and everything, then he seals it. And Roach is like, he sees I guess you could say he sees, like, the diner owner and shit like that. He's in demon form, and then he pulls up the shotgun. This is for 13 years of minimum wage. And Breaker's telling him, no, you'll break the fucking seal. He shoots him, and then, that one demon dies, but then they broke the seal. So now they're fucked, right? So now they're running out of the cave, trying to run all around. They go all the way upstairs, the way how it's set up. They have to go, like, around and shit. They get up there, they seal the edges and everything, so they're stuck upstairs now, because then all the demons were chasing them and shit. And I thought it was pretty cool, is that they didn't really explain too much of it. They kept the mystery, and then finally, you hear what it's about, right? So Breaker, he tells a whole story about the heavens and earth, and how there's 7 keys to protect, all the world and everything like that, because of, demons, they want to try and get it and bring hell on earth. Right? Well, they found 6 keys in other planets, and then now they found the 7th key, which is Breaker, who's been holding it. And the keys, the key that Breaker had was actually, done by somebody who, I guess, used the blood of Christ, or blood of Jesus, and it protected him from everything. And then later on, I guess it went from him, then it went to Breaker, because then they were in World War I, he was he was shot down, so he filled it up again with his blood. So the blood's all mixed up with everything, but it's pure, right? They give it to Breaker. And Breaker, what's crazy is that, they implied, because it was in World War I, 1917, and then it was current time when the film was made, 1995, 96, or 94, around that time frame, right? So they implied that, as long as he's holding the key, he doesn't age. He has to protect it. He always has to be on the run. And then he explains, who Billy Zane's character is, the Collector. He wants to collect it, drain the blood, because once he gets all the keys, now you have hell all over on Earth. Hell can take over everything. They kind of had, like, the idea of Doom, which I thought was really cool, because Doom was big and fucking hot at that time. So it had, like, kind of like the premise of Doom, almost. Like, they want to bring hell on Earth, basically, right? And so as that's all going on, then all of a sudden, they lose the kid. Then they lose the kid. They're like, oh, shit, where's Danny, right? So Danny, they're all looking for him and everything like that. Uncle Willie, he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go look for him, right? So they all split up, and before they split up, Roach, he had pickpocketed Breaker as he was talking to him, like, hey man, I thought that was cool, I know your story now, like, yeah. And then he fucking pickpockets him, right? Everyone's all looking for everybody, right? Everyone's getting all fucking mismatched and shit. Irene goes up in the attic, and then all of a sudden she sees that Danny's there with Uncle Willie. And Uncle Willie's up there drinking, and he's like, oh shit, I found the kid. And she's like, yeah, you damn drunk, get downstairs. So as they're going down there, then all of a sudden you see Danny and Uncle Willie, they go into another room, and now Billy Zane's trying to affect Uncle Willie, right? As he's affecting Uncle Willie, like trying to get into his mind, he's trying to do the same thing to Jerry Lynn. And he basically told Jerry Lynn, hey, let me in. All you have to do is let me take care of things, and I'll take care of Breaker. Then it shows like what he was gonna do to Breaker and shit. She sees the vision, and then he basically says, just let me in. Let me take over. You're the most beautiful thing. And she spits on his face. He's like, okay, I see you don't trust me yet. So as that happened, then all of a sudden now he's fucking with, Uncle Willie. And Uncle Willie, he walks to the room. He's like, what the fuck? And this is what's crazy is that he walks in and it's like, like a backyard barbecue shit. You see all these hot naked women all around him. And he's just like, holy shit, this is, whoa, okay. And he's starting to like it because all of a sudden he gets to the bar counter. Then you see the Collector like, hey, suck this one down, Willie. It's called Long Hard, or Long and Hard. It's something like that, right? And he's like, nothing gets you more fucked up. Ain't that right, girls? And then he's just like looking at the whiskey and he's like, come on, drink. So he's getting him to drink. They never implied what it was that he was drinking, but basically he was just taking him over, right? And eventually they do take him over because then Breaker, he goes in and he starts, he's like, oh, okay, we found Danny the kid, right? Then all of a sudden, Uncle Willie, he changes to a demon and he starts attacking fucking Breaker. And all of a sudden, Jerry Lynn, she's kind of conflicted. She tries to help him, and all of a sudden she gets knocked out. And then all of a sudden, Breaker gets like a machete, chops off his head. And they're like, oh, fuck, he's still alive. They're like, you need to pick up the head and smash his eyes, Danny. So Danny picks up this severed head. He's like, no, don't do this, Uncle Willie. Oh, puts his, eyes through fucking antlers and shit, right? Well, I thought it was pretty cool, So now, basically almost everybody's dead. You only have Irene, the sheriff deputy, and all that shit. And while that's going on, Irene and the sheriff deputy, they go through and they see that there's a bag from Wally. He had all these fucking guns. He was going to go crazy at the post office, right? And they said, fuck it. Well, and then they find out that he has, like, this big-ass, like, chain of nothing but, grenades. And it was like, oh, shit. So they are carrying that. And then all of a sudden, as that's all going on, Roach finally calls out the collector and says, hey, I want to make a deal with you, right? He's like, I'll give you the fucking key. Just let me go. And then he's like, all right, we can deal with that. Then all of a sudden, he's trying to be chill. So then he pulls out a sponge. He's like, but first, he drops out the sponge. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, you got to wipe that seal. So he wipes the seal off. And then he puts the key in the box, with the collector. And he's like, yeah, this whole end of the world shit, fuck that. I've had hemorrhoids. Then he did the King of the Hill thing. Vaya con Dios. And he's like, oh, vaya con diablos to you there, Mr. Roach. Oh, and by the way, I lied. And then all of a sudden you see all the demons like attack Roach and they fucking rip him apart. I was like, oh, shit. This is cool, right? And all of a sudden everyone's all freaking out. So then what they do is that they get a crossbow, they shoot, Billy Zane in the eye, the collector. So he's like, hey, everyone want to come out and play. I guess not. Then he falls down. And all of a sudden you see all the demons like trying to come after him. At this point, this is where everyone's all going up in the attic, right? So you have Danny the Kid, you have Geraldine, and then you have the sheriff like trying to save their ass, and then you have Irene, who's basically like, hey, come on, get in there. That's my house. You need to get in there. And then all of a sudden, like, when all the demons were coming in, closer, she's like, all right, supper time. Pulls all the fucking chains off and all the pins for the grenades. And I thought it was crazy. She sacrificed herself to save everything. So now, at this point, everybody's almost dead. You only have, Danny, and you have Breaker, and you have Jerry Lynn. And, they start talking like, hey, how much blood do you have left? He's like, just enough for one seal. But then he pours it on her, and then she saves some of it, and then puts it on as the window, right? Danny's reading the Tales from the Crypt comic. And all of a sudden, then he sees, the collector, and the collector possesses him. Then the collector comes out of Danny and starts attacking him, fucking destroys the shit out of Breaker, and then all of a sudden, Jerry Lynn, she kicks him right through the seal, and then kills the kid Danny, right? So as she's talking to Breaker, now Breaker, he starts telling his side of the story and says, hey, the first time out I looked at you, I knew you were something different. I had to make sure that you were going to take care of this in case something happened to me. So he holds her hand, passes everything over, gives her the key with his blood in it, right? Then the collector comes in and, starts staring down at Breaker. And Breaker, Breaker at this point, he's already dead. Then he starts saying, well, poor guy. All he had to do was give me the key. So his eyes were closed. Then what I thought was fucked up, he goes up there and lifts up his eyelids so his eyes were open as he's dead. It was fucking weird. Then all of a sudden, Jerry Lynn comes out, and then she starts telling him something. He goes over there to try to touch her, and then he's like, oh, fuck. And then he's like saying, that's not your blood. And she's like, nope. So that's when they started having a scuffle, because she protected herself in Breaker's blood so he wouldn't touch her. And all of a sudden, he grabs her and drags her into the shower, and then he's beating the shit out of her. And then all of a sudden, he starts, the water to try to do what he can to try to wash all the blood off. And then all of a sudden, she tries to grab the key and put it on his face. He breaks her fucking hand. Then all of a sudden, she starts screaming, and then she stabs him in the eye. As he's away for that second, she pours the blood in her mouth, right? And then all of a sudden, he washes everything and then drags her around, beats the shit out of her again. Then he starts talking to her like, you're starting to piss me off, Then he has this flame coming out of his pants and shit. Woo! I've never taken a demon knight back to the end, but I would love to take you and make you be my wife. What do you say? How come you're not talking? You need to talk to me. What's your fucking answer, And by that time, he was like, all right, I'll make you talk. And then that's when he pulls out his pinky with the fucking sharp blade, I think it was his finger, one of his fingers, right? It turns to a sharp blade, and he was gonna cut her. And all of a sudden, that's when she finally like spits out all the blood in his face. Then he fucking just melts. It was like the ending of Fright Night. Just like then his demon form comes out and he fucking blows up. Then it shows the ending. Now that she knows everything about the demons and everything like that, and now she knows she's a demon knight. She packs up her shit, takes her cat. She waits at a bus stop. She gets picked up, and then she puts a little blood seal around it, right? And then all of a sudden, bus stops, Then you see this other dude. He's wearing, like, all same thing as what Billy Zane was wearing, the collector. He goes in, and then he's like, No, I'll just wait for the next bus. You find out he's another collector, like, oh shit, this is crazy. So they're going to carry on this story, right? And all of a sudden, as the bus is going, he starts whistling the Tales from the Crypt Keeper theme. Amazing fucking movie. It doesn't get enough credit for what it was, for being classic B-rate in the 90s, And then when the whole story is done, then it goes back to the Crypt Keeper. He goes to his movie premiere, and he's like, oh, I enjoy the final cut. Just something fun like that, right? And so, overall, it was pretty cool. I enjoyed the movie. I obviously didn't see it when it first came out. Obviously, it's just... it came out in theaters, and it was probably in theaters like 2 weeks, and then they pulled it out. And a lot of people didn't like it, This film got panned by all the critics. And, the crazy thing is, I read one of the reviews from that time, actually, and they said, yeah, it's a good film if you're a 12-year-old horny teenager. And I was just dying laughing because it's just... I don't know where they're seeing that. The party scene, the naked chicks and stuff like that, but overall, it was put together very well. And a lot of people didn't really appreciate this film until later on when it started getting a little bit notoriety on it, And eventually, they did a re-release on this. They re-released it on Blu-ray because I know at this time, it came out on VHS. DVD had just came out, so they have it on DVD. But they re-released it back in 2015, 2016. Scream Factory did it, which I thought was pretty cool. If you ever get a chance to check that out because the documentary on it is pretty cool on that, right? So, it started getting notoriety on it. And what I thought was cool about this is that after all the credits are done, then you see at the end the Crypt Keeper comes out. Then he explained that there's going to be another Tales from the Crypt Keeper movie, which I thought was pretty cool because it was supposed to be taking place in New Orleans on Halloween, and they were going to call it Dead Easy, and that was what's planned. I guess they later on changed the name to Fat Tuesday because it's going to be around, during New Orleans and all that stuff, and it would have been cool, but then they canceled it, and I thought, oh fuck, and Demon Knight was originally written, and they had in mind that, okay, we're going to do 3 films, a trilogy of films, and we want Demon Knight to be number 2. Then they decided, okay, no, we're going to push Demon Knight as number 1, that way we hook everybody in, right? And it's a great film, if you like classic B-rate, expect it to be cheesy, expect it to be over the top. You have decent acting. You have a lot of big name actors that, either got their break in it, like Jada Pinkett, or you had ones that were already vets in this, William Sadler. What I thought was cool about him, he's always been a part of Tales from the Crypt. He was in the first ever pilot episode in an uncredited role, which I thought, oh, damn, this is cool. It's uncredited, but it's coming full circle. He's been there since the start. He was in the first film, Demon Knight, and he was also in Bordello Blood, which a lot of people forget about, which, that was another classic one that you'll see for the next one, as part of this whole Gruesome Twosome Grindhouse feature, right? But, there's so many different interesting things on Demon Knight that it just blew me away. Just the fact that it was originally written in the 80s. A lot of people passed up on it because of all the money features and everything like that. The fact of how they got the green blood to come out. What I thought was interesting too is that they try to keep all the ghoulish tones into it, So they wanted to try to release it on certain days and things like that, When Demon Knight came out, it was released on Friday the 13th in January of 1995. And they had it planned that they're like, okay, we're going to do it like on special, unique days like this, and which is cool. They kept true to their word, and the fact that this was kind of an extension of the show into a movie form. And, a lot of people were talking about this because back in the 90s, you didn't have social media, all that shit, kind of like promoting it and everything. But what they did is that in between seasons, they filmed the movie, and then they went back to doing the TV show. So I was like, oh shit, this is really cool, But you know what? I'm anxious to talk about the other one too. So tune in next time for episode 49 on Bordello of Blood, part of this Gruesome Twosome Grindhouse feature. Because, man, I gotta tell you, I love Tales from the Crypt, and, Bordello of Blood, it's a guilty pleasure film. It really is. But thank you all for tuning in to episode 48 on Demon Knight as part of this Grindhouse feature, brought to you by yours truly, SaWGuy. And I'll catch y'all next time, as always.
Bow down to the